Playbook for Performance, the official podcast of Shauna Corden, the Joan of Arc for corporate healing and performance. Join the quest to make work fun again by preparing leadership for engaging workplaces. And now, your host.
Hey everybody, Shauna Corden here, and so I'm so glad to be with you today because one of the follow-up questions that I got from the last podcast was, can you go into more detail about how I do that coaching conversation as a leader? And so what I want to do today is really give you an outline of what that conversation looks like and a couple things not to do. But do recognize like the full training on this is, 2 days. And then if you want to be a professional coach, credentialed by the ICF, etc., we're talking hundreds of hours of training. But for the purposes of today's podcast, what we're really trying to help you with today is this idea of I'm a leader. I am letting go of my death grip on my employees. I'm tired of being a micromanager. I'm tired of command and control. I'm tired of doing all the work. I want my employees to step up, and I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt that they really will step up, and that I'm going to resist my urge to tell them what to do and advise them all the time. And I'm just going to embrace curiosity. This is what it takes. So think about a spectrum of like, all the way on this side of one pole, all the way on the other side of this pole. This right here is curiosity. And when you are doing micromanagement, command and control, you are applying judgment all the way over here. And I'm not faulting you for this. Your entire career, you have been paid to be judgmental, that we go left instead of right. We order more mediums than smalls. We give this person more time to do this than that. We need 3 weeks to do this instead of 1 week. That's all because of your judgment skills. Those are a good thing. Judgment's not bad, but it does get in the way of a coach approach. So we want you to embrace your curiosity, and this is how it looks. So basically your employee comes to you and says, thanks for making that announcement last week that you're going to try and not be so command and control. You're really trying to use more of a coach approach. It's new to you. I get the vision of what we're trying to accomplish with this task. And so I'm here to share my ideas with you. Your job is to say, great, let's hear it. And the employee starts talking about how they want to use this particular approach, that they want to use these tasks, that they want to hire this group, that they want to spend this much money. Your job is to just say, tell me more. Now, in the back of your brain, out of habit, you will be saying, that's stupid. That's not going to work. We're going to miss the quarter. I can't believe I hired this person. You will have like every negative thought, but just like, starting to write with your left hand instead of your right, it's awkward. This is a new habit, a new behavior, a new way of thinking. It will feel like a total waste of time to start with. It's natural. It's totally natural. And that's why you want to rely on these phrases of tell me more. Keep going, etc. And then we want to ask open-ended questions with no agenda. What do you think this looks like when it's done? What do you think the hardest part will be? What experience are you relying on to come up with this plan? Who else do you think could benefit from this approach? Have you used this approach before? Just on and on and on. So you want to ask these open-ended questions till you've really thoroughly hashed out and helped your employee go through the thinking process to make sure that they have really thought things through. So that's kind of the mindset that you really want to embrace. But there is a structure to this conversation, and I'll go through it at a very high level. Again, I'm trying to cram a minimum of 16 hours of training and practice into this very short podcast. But just like you have a meeting agenda for any staff meeting with objectives and everything else, when it comes to these one-on-one meetings with your staff members, you want to have a very sort of loose agenda, like, hey, what are we talking about today? Okay, so this is sort of like programming your GPS. You're just like, okay, where are we going? We're going to Bend, Oregon. Okay, you're just like punching that in. You're not putting in the street address or anything like that yet. You're just like trying to get oriented so that you're both facing the same direction. Okay, and then you want to ask your employee, well, what do you want to get out of our conversation today? And anything is acceptable. They could say, well, I want your approval. I want a couple of ideas on this. I'm a little stuck right here. I thought we could work through it. I just want to think out loud. I want to hear if you see any glaring issues. I want to see if there's anybody that we can use to help in this process. Or could you give me the name of 3 vendors who have done, this kind of event for us before, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the next layer of detail for the agenda. And you say, great, okay. And whatever topic they chose, you say, where should we start, right? You want to give them the power to come up with where they're starting from, how they want to run it. Again, we're trying to push as much of the work onto them as possible. You've been working for them for so long. Help them do some of the work, right? So they've brought the topic, we're going to Bend, Oregon. And then that more specific thing, hey, I want to get to the park by the river, which is whatever topic they have. And then you say, great, where should we start? Do they want to jump in right in the parking lot outside the river? Do they need help navigating from a distant area to that parking lot? Just asking those open-ended questions. Now, here's the death nail of all these things that you do not want to use, and that is why. Don't ever say why. Why puts people on the defensive, puts them on the back foot, makes them feel like they have to explain themselves to you. And that's really a very unpleasant prospect, because then they're not confident in coming up with the ideas that they wanted to submit to you and that they're excited about and invested in. What they're really doing is they're having to defend themselves, to justify, and nobody likes that. So don't use why. That's like the cardinal sin of this coach approach, is why. And I would encourage you to come up with a couple of alternative phrases that would work for you when you really want to ask why. Like, help me understand. How did you come to this? Where did this come from? What else have you done that's been like this? Just to really help them articulate it without having to feel defensive about it or insecure about what they've suggested. Now, as the conversation has progressed and you feel like you're naturally getting to the conclusion of what they had offered as their agenda, how to get to the parking lot, whatever it might be, then we want to bring in the accountability piece, right? Because just because you're leading and you're doing the vision doesn't mean that you are exempt from managing. You are still responsible for managing their performance. And so this is where accountability comes in, but here's the twist. You're not going to say, I need this by Monday morning. What you're going to do is you're going to say, when's the first milestone? When can we expect this? What would the performance be? That kind of questioning, but they're coming up with it. They're going to say, I expect to be at that parking lot at 8 a.m. on Monday morning. Great. Then you can ask a follow-up question if you'd like, which would be, is there anything that might prevent you from doing this? and just have them come up with like catastrophes that might happen. And some of them, very low possibility. So we're going to crank back for a second to kind of risk management 101. It's like, here's all the possible things that could happen. There could be an earthquake. The road could crack in half. I'd have to push everything on a bicycle, whatever it might be. And then we want to say, well, what's the probability of those things happening? Right? If it's a fairly high probability, like let's say it's going to be rain on the event, could be a thunderstorm, whatever it might be, then you say, okay, given the probability of this is 40% or whatever, do we have a contingency plan? Do we have tents? Do we have whatever it might be? And so you just want to ask those questions. You don't want to say, you must do this. You're like, are you comfortable with this probability level, or do you want to have a contingency plan for this? And what's the consequences if you don't have a contingency plan for, whatever it is, preventing you from getting to that parking lot at 8 a.m. on Monday morning? You really want to put it in their lap. Don't take ownership of it. Don't come up with the alternative plans. Don't come up with a contingency. You really want to ask them and leave it up to them. Now, if you feel that they are dismissing something, if they're not taking a risk seriously, and it would really jeopardize the quarter, the department, whatever, then I think it's fair to say, I think you might be underestimating this, or I would be more comfortable if we had a contingency plan. Even though the probability is small, the impact would be so high. We might lose customers, we might miss our quarter, whatever that might be. That's how you have to offer it. Employees are naturally wired to please you. You control their pay and rewards. You determine their recommendations for promotions, things like that. So they're naturally wired to please you. And if they seem like they're not, getting your hint, you can be a little bit more direct. But do leave it in their lap. Do let them do the work. This is the whole point of you moving away from command and control to a coach approach. Now, if they're not doing the work, that's something totally different. That's what we call performance management. And we don't use a coach approach there. We start getting really direct. You needed to do 500 push-ups. You've only done 100. We're missing 400. What are we going to do about it? And you get to decide whether you think the employee is taking it seriously enough that they can come up with a plan to close that gap of 400, or if you need to impose one. But that's a totally different thing. That is not a coach approach moment. That's where you get to take command and control back, because it's performance management. And you can do a little bit where just like you observe the gap and you let them come up with a plan, and you make sure they understand the consequences if they don't close the gap. Or you can get more command and control and say, this is what we will do to close the gap. Okay. So I hope that gives you a really good idea of how to have that coaching conversation after you've decided, I'm working too hard. I've been doing way too much of the work. I've been the one brain powering 10 people. I'm ready to relax a little bit and do this thing that is called leadership. Okay. So if you have more questions about this coach,
Thank you for listening to Playbook for Performance. To learn more about Shauna Corden, her consulting programs and tools, please visit her website at shaunacorden.com and follow us on social media at Shauna Corden.